In August of last year, 2021, I posted a video that was called Justice for Nightbirde. It's probably one of the most viewed videos I've posted. And I spoke about her on a few other occasions, but that particular video was talking about how could God be just in allowing someone who claims to be a Christian to face cancer as she was. If you're not familiar with the story, I'll give you a little background in a second. But the things that I was talking about was a couple of things that I thought she said were very poignant and very important. One of the first things that she says, and I talked about this in July 8th of last year, she said, "It's important that everyone knows I'm so much more than the bad things that happened to me." At the time, she was going through cancer, and that was the story on America's Got Talent that they talked about. So you can go back and watch that video anytime. But the other thing she said was, "You can't wait until life isn't hard anymore to be happy." And I talked about that back on June 24th. Go watch those at your own will. But she was very impressive, very well thought out philosophically and practically. She seemed to be one of the few people who thought deeply about important things like pain and suffering and grieving, the reality of life. And then she had the opportunity to live out those philosophies in front of all of us, and we're all probably blessed because of it. And I say was because if you didn't know this, she passed away back in February, and I'll come back to more of her final words in a minute. Anyway, good morning. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching. I'm not going to do jokes today just because of the nature of the topic, but maybe there's somebody watching who is mourning or grieving themselves. So I wanted to do this post for you today. If you're watching this, you probably know who she was, but if you don't, you should go back and watch her first audition on America's Got Talent. I put it in the link to that in the post details today. But she just has this sweet spirit about her, even though everything in her life wasn't okay. And ironically, she sang a song called Okay. But she said something prior to her death that I wanted to dig into today, and this is about 3 paragraphs, so stick with me. This is from a news story. It says, in the video, she posted an Instagram video, I believe. It said, Nightbirde looks frail, but unexplainably joyful with her patented smile. She told her fans, just because you're sad or grieving doesn't mean you're not grateful. And it doesn't mean you're not hopeful. It doesn't mean that you still aren't fighting for your life, that you still don't have it in you to keep going. And she continues, but sadness and grief and mourning and lamenting and crying and screaming and being angry, these are ways that we honor what we've lost. She continues, I heard a quote saying, sadness is the soul's way of saying this mattered. And I think grieving and feeling through all the emotions that you feel, the sadness and the grief and the injustice and the anger and the loss and the bargaining, I think it's a holy work, the singer said. It's scary to go down those dark roads, but you know what? Those feelings don't leave you, and you can't fake the rest of your life like nothing bad happened and whistle a happy tune all day. That's not what it is to be human. I wanted to talk just briefly about that today. She probably says it better than I will, but we have this tendency to pretend that everything is okay, even when it's not. Someone, hey, how are you doing? Oh, good, well, doing fine, great. And we tend to cover up like things aren't hard for us. There's something about us that wants to pretend that we have it all together and everything is always great, but for many people, that's not the reality. And in fact, Christians are probably worse at this than others. We think that somehow that as Christians, our lives are supposed to be somehow better than others and free of pain or worry and suffering. But the reality is we know that that isn't true. You know, the 12 disciples that were closest to Jesus, who were even willing to die for him, mostly did, and they suffered on their way. But suffering and grieving and mourning and pain are a part of life. It proves that we are alive, and that's probably doesn't mean anything to somebody who's in the depths of that kind of despair and mourning today. But human emotions are real and not to be ignored. And Nightbirde has given us a wonderful example of how to suffer and go through something with dignity and grace. If you look through Scripture, you'll find examples of heartache and death and loss. But the story doesn't end there. If you keep reading through Scripture, that says something else about mourning and grieving. And the Apostle Paul writes in 1 Thessalonians, He says, brothers, we do not want you to be ignorant about those who fall asleep, or to grieve like the rest of men who have no hope. Paul implies that there's a different way that a Christian would mourn. Um, I've conducted many funerals in my time of being pastor here. One of the things that is hardest is trying to comfort a family who doesn't have any hope that this person that is dead, there's no chance of a life after death for them, and that's just it. But Paul goes on to explain here in 1 Thessalonians 4:13 that even after death there is hope for those who believe and trust in Jesus. And I think that was the difference for Jane. Jane was Nightbirde's real name. And her family posted on her Instagram account after her death. They posted, "It's like Jane knew the words she needed to leave us with before she left. We hope her words comfort you all as you mourn." And as I read that, I was reminded of what Jesus would probably agree with her family. And he said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, the Sermon on the Mount, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And I think that's true. That's what Paul's getting at in 1 Thessalonians. So let me just wrap this up with this today. Whatever pain and loss and suffering that you're experiencing today, know this: there is hope. There is life beyond this one. Spring is near, I think. But I do know this: the tomb is empty. And Jesus Christ gives life after death and promise of hope, so that we don't have to grieve as those who have no hope. So I hope that encouraged you today. As always, like, comment, share. Let me know when you're out there. I appreciate that. And may God bless you today. Have a great day.